So everyone just take a deep breath. Just connect to the sounds. Connect to each other. Connect to those who are not in this room. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Beth now.
First, I would like to share with you that I don't have a plan when I come in to lead something, because I don't lead it. I just open myself up to guidance and hope for the best. So that's what we're going to do today. And of course, we're here, we're being called yet again. And for those of us who are of an age, it never ends, does it? And it's great because it keeps us going. I can't imagine what life would be like at this point if I didn't have something that I believed in and that I really wanted to see happen. You know, for many people in the world, life is about cold and hunger and sickness and pain. I don't have cold and hunger, but I have plenty of sickness and pain. And that doesn't stop me from caring about other people having cold and hunger and sickness and pain. On the contrary, we can use the pains of our lives, whether it's physical pain or emotional pain, spiritual pain, psychic pain, to relate to others and to care more, or we can use it to focus on ourselves and say, the world owes me and needs to take care of me. And I mean, that is what it is to turn ourselves out of that ego consciousness into inner revolutionary consciousness, which is that we turn our pain into caring. And I know many of you have done exactly the same thing. And that our pain connects us to all the suffering on the planet. But we also need more than pain to change. We need hope. And we need a vision of where we're going. In the last week or so here in Southern Oregon, it's been snowing, a very unusual amount of snow for this area. We had 2 feet of snow on our deck. And it's been like a winter wonderland. And we have a tree, you know, and we can't bear to take it down because now it feels like Christmas. And I didn't grow up with Christmas. I grew up from a Jewish family, and I have no associations with Christmas, except as I matured and I heard Handel's Messiah, and I heard this beautiful, inspiring music, and that peace on earth, goodwill towards humanity, and towards, hopefully, the animal kingdom as well. And that's what Christmas came to mean to me. It was truly a moment of our energizing the aspect of ourselves that is caring and loving. And look how many people in the world celebrate Christmas or other holidays in other cultures that really carry that same energy. And yet we are so cynical that we don't believe that we'll ever be able to make the world in that image. And I ask you, how could it be that so many millions, billions, I don't know how many, I lost count 50 years ago, people who still love that idea, why can't we reach to them? I don't care if you voted for Donald Trump or Donald Duck. You know, inside the heart of just about every human being, and I will not say every human being because I don't know, but I do know that inside just about every heart of every human being, there is a child that cared, that felt, that had wonder and that wanted peace on earth, peace in their families. How many children were traumatized by the lack of peace in our own families, by the drinking and the arguing and the violence, and were traumatized before we even got to school, where we might have been bullied, or we might have had disabilities and we were put down, or we ourselves were self-centered and didn't care about the suffering of others because we hadn't been trained to think differently. But that child inside never went away. And I believe in that child inside that walks around old and decrepit and still cares and still is in wonder and still loves the spirit of Christmas. And I don't mean the gift certificate. You know, why are we so touched by these songs if it's not real for us? And yet, how many of us have really given up on that vision? Oh, some of us may still be motivated to rail against the government or against this or against that. And hey, there's plenty to rail against. Don't misunderstand me. I get it. I understand. We have to speak out and we have to stand up against all injustice, against oppression, against prejudice, against racism, against sexism, against every make-believe distinction that we have that justifies our not caring about other human beings. I get that. We need to take a stand, but what we need is more than to take a stand against. I have been in the stand against. As Roz mentioned, I became a social political activist when I was 9 years old, and that was 1954. And that was the McCarthy era and the House Un-American Activities Committee. And you opened your mouth and you could go to jail. Yes, I wasn't tortured in an Egyptian prison, but I did live in a very frightening era. And in many ways, it didn't get any better. And I mean, I had friends who were shot or who were killed or who were framed, and I was arrested and all of that. Over many, many organizations and many causes. And I felt the righteousness and I felt the pain of the suffering of the people that we were trying to support. But I also felt my own anger. And I felt my own polarization. And I saw myself arguing with everybody. And everybody was arguing with me. I mean, does anybody here relate? If you were in the movement at all, you know what I'm talking about. It was off the pig and everybody else was the pig. I mean, the left was scattered, shattered, and then came the violence. And then those of us who had been singing, "Give Peace a Chance," because we were against the war or ban the bomb or whatever we were doing, or against racism and, you know, for civil rights. I mean, and we saw the whole thing blow up in our faces as people were becoming what we were fighting. And there was that part of me too that was like that. And I saw it in all of us. And I was bankrupt. And I talk about this in the beginning of the handbook for the Inner Revolution, when I have a very brief personal note about why I wrote this handbook. It's because I was there. And I was there for a long time, until 1978, when I just burnt out on myself. And I didn't know where to go. And out of the blue, because I was a Marxist, and I don't mean I was a proponent of, you know, Soviet communism. I was a socialist. I believed in from each according to his ability to each according to his need. You know, I believed in the spirit of communism, the spirit of socialism, the spirit of democracy, the spirit of love, the spirit of caring. I mean, that's what it was really about for us, wasn't it? We couldn't stand seeing pictures of people being napalmed. You know, the pain was excruciating. I'm sure some of you who lived through this period and through other similar periods, you may have felt the way I did, that my youth was stolen from me because I couldn't find any joy in my life watching the suffering of, it seemed, just about everybody. And I suddenly, out of all of this pain and conflict and anger, I had a spiritual awakening. Go figure. I mean, I was an ardent atheist. And all of a sudden, a voice started talking to me in my head, telling me what to do. And I thought, okay, I'm psychotic. You know, what can I say? But, you know, I listened to the voice, and suddenly I became a counselor, and I was helping people, and I was sharing, and I saw things, and I thought, where is this coming from? I still don't know where it's coming from. I mean, you can call it God, you can call it the universe, you can call it higher consciousness. I don't care what you call it, just call it. Let's come together and call for whatever divine, universal guidance. We need all the help we can get. We need each other. We need our own intelligence, our own common sense, and all that. But we also need whatever is out there. And I really believe that it's out there because it's been guiding my life since I was 33 years old. Not always in directions that I cared for, by the way. But I listened anyway. And so I became a spiritual teacher. And it's like, okay, so I meditated on my navel, and I really helped people to change internally and happiness and all of that. But it was still nagging at me, you know. I couldn't help it. You know, you drive by and you see that homeless person and they're shivering. And you know, I don't care how much you've meditated. It's still there. You know, and people are still being brutalized in our country, around the earth. And women are being beaten and sold as commodities, and children are being damaged, and men are being used and used up and thrown away by a system that is relentless and has no caring for the human soul. I knew something was wrong with capitalism when I was 9 years old, and there still is. I'm not saying that free enterprise doesn't, but I haven't seen free enterprise since I've been around. Something is wrong. Power begets power. I don't care what you call it. I don't care if you call it Soviet communism, which we used to call state capitalism. You know, it was a capitalist, but the state had all the power. There's something wrong, and it was through my spiritual work that I realized what was wrong is us, not them. And what's wrong with us is the same thing that's wrong with them. It's the ego. And it sounds like, woo, this is the woo-woo part. Oh, it's the ego. It's nothing woo-woo about the ego. If you see a 2-year-old saying, nah, nah, mine, gimme, grabbing, you've seen it all. What do you need to see? That's the ego. That's the ego that is not grown up. In the handbook for the Inner Revolution, I actually talk about the ego. Everything's very brief because everybody, you know, my last book was 688 pages. It's like I almost lost all my friends over that. This one is short and punchy and to the point and activist oriented, but it starts with that spiritual understanding of what is with us. You know, it's the minute that we see the world through our eyes and we don't see the world through the whole, the eyes of the whole, we're in trouble. We're in trouble, every one of us. You know, it's whether I'm in an interaction with my husband or I'm trying to overthrow the government. If I am into polarization, if I'm seeing through the lens of my ego, me, what I need, I see it in myself every day. You know, you go for a job and you want it for yourself. You're not sitting there thinking, gee, I wonder if the person sitting next to me really needs that job more than I do, right? Now, some of us do that with the problem you want to starve. But our society isn't built on that, right? We don't think oneness. We don't react oneness. And it's not our fault. It's because that's the way we are. First of all, we're sentient, right? So if it's cold and I don't have a sweater, I'm going to be miserable. Now, there may be 15 other people in the room who don't have sweaters either, but who's cold am I feeling? Me. It's about my cold. Or if I don't know that somebody sitting in this room right now doesn't have a terrible stomach ache or a migraine or whatever. But see, I don't know that because, I don't have a migraine right now. So I'm feeling pretty good, right? So naturally, we're sentient beings. How can we help it? We shouldn't beat ourselves up for this, but we got to grow up already. And growing up means that we realize that we do not thrive in a world where everybody's miserable except for us. I grew up in the world where you went for yourself, right? Get ahead. Go to school, get the best grades, raise your hand to make sure the teacher notices how smart you are or whatever. Or some of us felt like we were on the other side, we were the dumb kids that everybody was going to make fun of. All of this is all about me, isn't it? I didn't learn anything different. But I learned over a long lifetime that the more I focused on me, the more miserable I was. Now, the ego has a useful function. If it's cold and I need a sweater, I should get one. If I'm hungry, I should eat, right? I need to go to sleep and I need to protect my energy and take care of myself. But the ego should not dominate, because what happens is when we are dominated by short-term ego-based consciousness, we do stupid things individually and collectively. Okay, I was talking about, supposing I get that job. Maybe it's the worst job in the world for me, but I want that job because, see, I heard how much it was paying, and I already have a plan about what I'm going to do with that money and who I'm going to impress and how I'm going to make my parents happy or how my children are going to go to Harvard 50 years from now, whatever. See, I'm not even thinking about myself in a holistic way. The ego gets us going on these things that are nonsensical. Women, I saw it from the time I was growing up, women plucking their eyebrows that always, oh my God, I wouldn't inflict pain on myself to have a perfect eyebrow, or waxing themselves. Or now some of you may pluck your eyebrows and wax yourself and say, that's it, I'm turning this off right now. But what I'm saying is, that we do things, we hurt our feet, we hurt our bodies in order to look a certain way, and whoever said we needed to look that way? Where did that come from anyway? The things that we do to ourselves, and then we teach our children, they have to be that way too. My mother's favorite expression was, it isn't done. That it just isn't done. I guess that to her, that was enough. Or close behind, what would the neighbors think? So it gets passed on. And even if she doesn't say anything, it's like the eyebrows. And for some people, it's the fist. Some people are actually treated abusively on a physical level by their parents who are trying to get them to behave. But what we're not learning is how to think. And we're not learning how to think holistically, not just about ourselves. What does my body, mind, and spirit need? And we don't think about the whole because nobody told us to do that. And even when we are revolutionaries and, we're in the Tenants' Right Organization or the Welfare Rights Organization, all that stuff, which, many of us have done, women's movement, we have the opposition. There's always somebody to hate. Somebody is wrong. And God forbid you should feel empathy for that son of a gun. You're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to have all this, righteous indignation and fit in with the crowd. I didn't like myself. I did not like some of the things that I did. I did not like some of the things that I went along with. And I thought I was such a revolutionary. I wouldn't do the things that other women would do, but I sure did that. I went along with things that I didn't feel comfortable with because that's what I thought I had to do to make the revolution. And now I understand that the only way to make the revolution is not to do those things, is not to do the wrong things, is not to go along even with our friends when we know in our gut that something is wrong. And I also know that because I've been a counselor, you know, an intuitive counselor, that Adolf Hitler could be in my office and I would feel compassion for him. I wouldn't feel compassion for him if he was standing up on a stage doing his thing. I would have a lot of trouble feeling compassion as my relatives were taken off to the gas chamber, which they were. But if I had him in the room and I could look at his eyes and I asked him about his life, I would be overflowing with compassion, which means I've got to be able to do that even when I'm not in a position to know the inside story, because there's always an inside story, always. And I look at the wealthy, the ruling class, as we used to call them, and, you know, they're such victims of their own bullshit, aren't they? Haven't they bought the story hook, line, and sinker about what they have to amass and what they have to do in order to preserve themselves? And, oh, what are the stockholders are going to say? Or, oh, you know, what is the CEO thinking about me? And, you know, where is my future? And I had a wealthy client who used to hide bullion under his bed. What's with this? And you've seen it. You've seen celebrities going bonkers, going into rehab. I mean, all the things that we value in our society, the money, the prestige, you know, the power, making people sick. And the separation from the rest of us, that they had to pretend that they didn't know about the pain of the world. And I was fortunate to briefly be a scholarship student at an Ivy League college, from which I was expelled, by the way. This will come as no surprise. But during that time, I got to talk to the girls, you know, and the girls with their coming out parties and their, you know, cashmere sweaters and all of that. They lived in a fantasy world. They didn't know anything about the world they were living in. They were so alienated that they kept themselves drunk with debutanteism because they couldn't face. And I would go into their rooms and I would say, hey, because I came from a poor working class family, I said, this is reality. And there was something in them that wanted to know. They wanted meaningful lives. They didn't want to be tokens on the arm of some man who had graduated Princeton, which was the goal of just about everyone. Emptiness, self-delusion, alienation from other human beings, blindness, trying to pretend you don't see the suffering. That is what we see in the wealthy. And we know the pain of the poor. And we know the pain of everybody in between who's desperately trying not to fall to the bottom. If you're sick, oh my God, you could lose your job and be homeless tomorrow. And our society makes sure that being disabled is about the most miserable experience you can have. So you don't get too comfortable being disabled, so you'll go back to work. And I know this from experience because I was on disability. I've had a long life and a lot of things happen. So everybody suffers. I know this. I know this in my heart. I know this because everyone is the same on the inside. We all need love. We all need validation. We all need a sense of safety and security. And so we say what we all need is the inner revolution, where we shift our consciousness from the I to the we, where we begin to understand that in order for us to be happy, the world has to be happy. You can't be the only happy person in a miserable world. It just don't work. Supposing the waitress threw your food at you, which she sometimes does on the inside because her feet hurt because she's standing in some stupid shoes while you're sitting there drinking martinis. I mean, it's not a happy world because psychically we're all connected. We feel each other's anger. We feel each other's pain. We are one. We have to remember that. We have to start living that way. And we are accountable for everything that we do, everything we think, everything we say. And we need to be in a world of mutual support where we support the whole and the whole supports us, where we stop bartering our needs and always on the make, trying to figure it out. It's like we called it the potluck revolution. You know, you go to the potluck, you bring what you have, and you eat. Maybe you can only afford beans. Nobody says to you, you're not allowed to eat salad. We all know this. We have it in our experience. Oneness, accountability, and mutual support. I lay it out in the handbook very clearly. Not only what is the vision for our world to live with oneness, accountability, and mutual support. Not only do I demonstrate what you all know is how different life would be if we just practice those principles. But also how to get there, how to live it now. I'm not going to wait for the world to be perfect before I start practicing oneness, accountability, and mutual support. I have to know how to do it now. And I have to know how to do it in my movement. I have to know how to do it in my couple, if I'm in one, in my family, with my friends, with my community, anywhere, at business, anywhere and everywhere. And so it's all written. It's so darned simple. It's frightening. And the reason it's frightening is because when things are that simple, you can't run away. And so the handbook, it's a couple of pages on the ego explaining how we grew up and what the problem is and what the shift in consciousness is and what oneness really means. I mean, in very, very down to earth, very specific ways, and how we can be accountable in a world that isn't accountable and how we can make it more accountable. You know, God, every one of us knows about accountability. All we have to do is look at global warming and mutual support, the world we really want to co-create, and how we can be mutually supportive now, and how we can start thinking from a global consciousness now. Not that we don't exist as individuals, but just that we don't exist only as individuals. And so the handbook, it's so clear. And then I give you in the conclusion 1,000,000 ways that you can participate in the inner revolution. I mean, it's like, oh God, is she going to tell me another thing that I really could do? Yes. Because we can do this. We can do this in our personal relationships. We can do it everywhere. We can be the inner revolution. And we have support of one another. If you really get turned on, read the handbook, give it a chance, right? And then you can start thinking about how can I bring the inner revolution into my organization, my religion, my family, myself. Every one of these, wherever people gather together, there the ego shall be in its midst. And how do we transcend that and still be human? It's all there. It's simple. Not easy, but it's simple. And you can then take that handbook, and we're going to have a page. Todd is going to put a page on our website. And if you endorse it, you're going to say, I endorse this. And you can even put a comment in about why you endorse it. Now, some of you may be the Dalai Lama in disguise. And boy, I would love to have the endorsement of the Dalai Lama. But I'd love to have the endorsement of Carol. See, I said Carol because I knew there were enough Carols that, if I remembered nobody else, there'd be at least one Carol in the room. Right? I mean, we want you. We want you to endorse it. And we want you to send it on to your friends, even if they never speak to you again. And that, of course, is what every inner revolutionary has to face. It's like, oh, your friends are going to think, oh, this is so stupid. Whose idea was this? You can't do that. That's impossible. That's pie in the sky. That's ridiculous. All
of my friends have said thank you.
Well, There you go, because you have the right friends. What can I say? Whatever. You know what my brother calls my work, my entire life's work? Beth Junk.
Sibling rivalry. Huh?
What can I say? He's not well. You know, on a bad day, I go, you know, on a good day, I say, okay, I need to rise above this and have compassion. With compassion, I have to be in the oneness with my brother. I have to be in the oneness with him. No, anything but that. So anyway, what I'm saying is, who cares, right? It's what is left is that which has value. And so you can spread the word of the inner revolution just like that. Endorse, send it out to your friends. Easy, right? Or you can start thinking about how am I going to bring this into my family? We have inner revolutionary couples, we have inner revolutionary families, we have inner revolutionary men, lots of inner revolutionary women, lots of places to go to get support. We do free workshops. We do very reasonable workshops and all that. There's lots of support to bring this consciousness into any arena of life. We have people in business. We want to talk to you. You want to talk to us? There's a section at the end of the book called Talk to Us. You know, we want to be creative. You know, the next chapter of that book is written by you. It's not written by me. I don't know what the heck is going to happen. This may be the last time any of us speak to each other. Except for the group that's the innerrevolution.org. You know, we've been glued together for so long that I know that no matter how bad this is today, I'll still see you. Yes, you will love me tomorrow. So, and then, as Helen said, we're having a weekend training next weekend in Oregon. Now you can say, oh, I have no time to get to Oregon next weekend. Yeah, but you can get on your computer. And it's $269 for the entire weekend.
Right.
And we have monthly trainings. Let's say you are the seventh cousin 25 times removed of Paul McCartney. Is he still alive?
Yes.
Okay, Paul McCartney, send him the Inner Revolutionary Handbook. The handbook for the Inner Revolution is a proper official name. And ask him to write us a song. You know, hey, think about this, guys. I've got 10 fingers and 10 toes. I have a finger in every pot. But if we have 100 people, each with 10 fingers, that's 1,000 fingers and 1,000 pots. You know, this is not undoable. That's the darn thing about that handbook. I'm not asking us to become saints. I'm not asking you to stand up to the torture of the KGB. I am asking us to do what we can, what we know how to do, what's in our hearts already. And I'm asking us to look at our egos straight in the face and say to them, you have run this planet long enough. I'm tired of having business run by the ego, the highest profit for all. I'm tired of the school system being full of people who are more worried about their promotions than their children. I'm tired of any part of myself that doesn't get it. I want to live in a thriving world, and I'm going to do everything I can to contribute to that. And so will many of us. You can even ask me to come as a speaker, as long as you have the internet, because I'm too sick to travel. I'm not done and you're not done. I feel it in your heart. Let's create together the world that every child knows needs to be done. You don't have to be a genius to figure this out. Kindness, oneness, accountability, mutual support. We can do this. But will we?
Are you open to questions and comments?
Absolutely. I feel like,
I have a question I'd like to ask. How do you bond over possibilities with somebody whose political or cultural views are diametrically opposite your own?
you look for the connection. That's James, by the way. He's my husband. He has to live with me.
I get to live with her.
I mean, I'm a 24-hour-a-day inner revolutionary, constantly looking at myself for how I've screwed up that day. It's really simple. Look past the label. You know, we're horrified, aren't we, when people are treated in a stereotypical way just because they're Native American, or because they're gay, or because they're disabled, or they're Muslim, or whatever. Why don't we apply that same, what do you mean treat us like we're stereotypes, to people who are Republicans, or Trump supporters, or born-again Christians, or whoever we have decided the they is to us? They think we're they, we think they're they. You know, strip away the facade and look for the human being. Look for the part of every human being that knows that this planet needs to change, that we human beings need to change our relationship to ourselves, stop driving ourselves, stop letting the ego drive us, that we need to change our relationship to one another. We need to change our relationship to the planet, to the animal kingdom. Inside every human being is that person, James. That is the whole point. Thank you for the question.
You bet.
So I don't remember what it was you were talking about. It sparked me to think about the ego and oneness and being an inner revolutionary and coming together. And I just got back from a trade show in Las Vegas that had 150,000 people there. Wow. So there was a lot of competition just for space to walk, you know, places, and, you know, different vendors are hawking their goods, and that was going on. So there was that part of it that was, you know, and I saw some of the desolation of people who were trying to get their product out there and some of the desperation. But I actually had a blast there. And it was because I was there as part of a team, and we were acting like a team the whole time. So there's this one event, it's for press only. Every vendor there only has like a table, like a small table. No matter how big you are, you can be Google, and you still just get a small table. And I had some colleagues that were down the line from us representing another client, and one of the reporter came from there to us, and I started saying, well, actually, and talking about their product, even though I was demoing her on my client's product. But then they would escort media down to our booth, because as they were talking to the reporter, they'd say, oh, I know somebody else that you should be talking to.
Nice.
So it was just like this whole connection. And I just felt like, you know, we were thinking about each other, working as a team, and we were having a blast. Like, it was just so much fun being this way. So that's the other part of like being in the oneness, is it's so much like, if you think about the people competing and their desperation, or you think about the people connecting and partnering and how much fun it is, that's being an inner revolutionary. It's fun when you feel this connection and this togetherness, and like when this caring about other people.
That is so incredibly true. We've had an inner revolutionary family program which did super supportive Sundays, and we brought together children, lots of them, to give them cooperative games. And they had a ball. And also to talk. It was about fitness, cooperation, service, and critical thought. So they got to talk about their experience and to think about their experience, but they had it cooperative. And they also got to be of service. It was wonderful. It's what you're talking about, Christine. It's like, give people a chance. In our competitive society, it's so hard to be different. But the more that we do it and we co-create environments, we're giving people a chance to be different. And that last point, that was the second point I was going to say before. Laugh, laugh, laugh. Maybe if, you know, the police are taking you down to be tortured, you know, it's kind of hard to sing. You know, but Hey, I remember in the old days, when you just start singing, laugh, have fun. I would like to see the inner revolution be fun. I want to enjoy it. I don't want it all to be about, ah, ah, and at the end of the century, when we still haven't won, it's like, ah, ah, I mean, you get old really fast. We have to keep ourselves going. We have to have that spirit, and we need joy. And I have a theory, which is that people will be more inspired by joy than they will by all gloom and doom. And that, we've done it. We've done all the, oh, it's so terrible, the world is coming to an end. And there's a lot that's terrible. Who's going to deny that, right? But what really gets people going is when they start to feel happy.
And have hope.
And so I'm all for laughing, happy, fun. I'm not for smoking pot and drinking when you're supposed to be working on a flyer. But that's different. That was the 60s. Energy. Yeah, work together. Be a team. See that your weaknesses are compensated by other people's strengths, and your strengths can complement someone else's weaknesses. It's synergy. All right, who would like to share next?
Okay, my question is kind of along the lines of what James was asking, and you've already touched on, which is, we've got, for me personally, I think about people that didn't vote the way I did, and I'm wanting to do a couple things. I want to connect to those people, see them as human, and then I also want to see if there are ways that I can collaborate with other groups that might have some commonality with me. And I'm thinking about your book, the book about the inner revolution and this new book, and that's a set of tools that we can use to create those connections with other people. So I'm thinking about, your book talks about oneness. I'm thinking about being aware of my own ego and how, when I have a trigger, when I see somebody, I say, oh, that's a Trump voter, or that's a label like a Republican. And having that consciousness and awareness that, oh, I'm thinking of that person as somebody other than me, and I'm better than them, or I'm putting them in a box. Is there maybe one other tool in your toolkit that stands out to you for a way that I could engage with these people that I have as an other? And I'll give you one specific example. Lately, when I wake up in the middle of the night, or when I'm with my girlfriend, or when I'm with a friend, I find these intrusive, invasive thoughts coming in about how I'm angry at Trump, or I'm angry at the others, right? And I try to focus, and I say, what can I do that's positive instead of being angry at these others? But is there one of your tools that, for me, in this situation I'm describing, I don't want these invasive thoughts because I'm trying to get work done, but how can I work with that anger in my tummy that's taking away from being present?
One of the tools that I think you might find helpful, because you've already mentioned, send all these people the handbook for the inner revolution and have them tell you that they don't believe in it, because they will believe in it, because they're people too. But a thought comes to mind about, because you're asking, is there one more tool? It's called the I am that tool. See, when I look at, and this came back from the Living with Reality book, which is 688 pages, as I said, but anyway, that's when I developed a lot of this in much greater depth, and there are 9 platforms instead of 3 and all that. And if somebody wants to read that, please, it's also free. In fact, we pay people by the page. But John, when the I am that tool is, what is it about those people that is bugging me the most? And then when I've identified what it is, then I say, how am I that? How am I exactly like that? I did a workshop once on racism as a function of projection. And this was 20 years ago, right? And this woman was like, on Mexican women, oh my God, they're so irresponsible. They have all these babies, and I don't know what she's been reading. But anyway, she had that vision, and then we got to the fact that she ended up having a child that she was not prepared to deal with, and that child had a severe mental illness. And she never forgave herself for having that child. And she never really nurtured that child. It was a function of projection. When I am the most angry, I have got to force myself to recognize how I am like that person. And it really dissipates that energy because I end up feeling embarrassed instead of angry. And then, not to say that embarrassment is a great feeling, but it's better than righteous indignation, which is pretty sick, right? And also, I want to say that the I am that tool, which is in the appendix, right?
The first one.
It was the first one in the appendix. That's not in the book. These tools are not in the book, so you got to read them all. But if you meet somebody who you think is just marvelous, and you're eating yourself up with envy, which I've never done, right? So, say to yourself, I am that too, and see how you're like them also. It's it's that basic, it in your gut. It's the basic oneness of humanity is showing up in how, I think I read recently that the human DNA is the most similar of all the people in the whole world. When you look at the DNA of human beings, they are the most similar of any different species.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I have found that to be true, that people are really the same. It's hard to look past so many of those cultural things like, the Chinese used to bind the feet of their women. Ugh, they're not even human. Yeah, but women in this culture put their feet into high-heel shoes. I mean, we do these things. Obviously, that's a way of disempowering a class of people. So if we look past the culture, and also, by the way, when you do that, it gives you the courage to confront people on things that are wrong. Like, no, I don't accept that there is a cultural explanation for female genital mutilation that makes it okay. It is not okay. It is not in the oneness. I'm sorry. And, so when you get this, when you really you start to feel this, I am that, you can also have the guts to confront stuff. Like, okay, so your father just said something racist. And this is also in the conclusion of the book. You can, unless the man is like suffering from dementia and really can't, isn't responsible anymore, you can say, Dad, this feels, like you're acting like these people aren't human. I have a tendency to do that with Republicans. You know what I mean? Always relate. So while you're confronting, you're relating.
Yeah.
Did that help, John?
Yeah, it does. It reminds me of how a few times when I thought about Trump, I noticed that part of my distaste for him was that I was projecting about how he has this great wealth, and I was upset at his great wealth. And I thought, I'm feeling greedy, I'm feeling envious, I'm wanting my own wealth. So, yeah.
Yes, that's very good. That is, such a good practice because we are embarrassingly alike, aren't we? In fact, that's how come I know so much about you, because I've been looking at myself for a long time.
My name's Corey, and I just heard about you from Todd yesterday, so I'm super excited to be here and read your book. So thank you for giving us all a copy. I really agree with, co-creating, and I came into my own awakening recently, and which is really cool, but you also feel a little isolated because you want to create a change in a positive way, and we need each other to do that, but we have a competitive nature, especially in this country, built on capitalism. So co-creating kind of goes against that competitiveness to be number one and stand out. So how do you break through that barrier?
Yes.
People from their minds to their hearts more. And
that's such an excellent question, Corey. When you get into the book, the handbook, I really address that directly because human nature is both yes and no. Human nature is caring and human nature is selfishness. And what we are trained to be is competitive, selfish, and ego-based. But that isn't the only part of us. And that's why I started my talk with Christmas, because there is an equal drive to be loving, giving, and peaceful. But it's not fed. You know, it's like that old story about which the wolf that wins is the one that is fed. And we feed competition, we feed ego, and we've been corrupted by it. We compete with each other in our own groups. And I'm not blind to that. On the contrary, I say, let's take it on directly. You know, we need to look at the ego and we need to start feeding the other side of us so that we drag the ego with us, you know.
And get support.
And get support from one another to overcome the domination of our egos. We won't get rid of them, but we can stop them. We can say, okay, babble, thank you for sharing. I talk about put it back in the crib. You know, if the ego is very infantile, and in the introduction to the handbook, I explain why the ego is so infantile and how it gets fed. But we have another aspect of ourselves that we can reach out to, and that other people can reach out to us. We're not going to win every battle. We're not going to win every heart. There are always the people who get it first and who say, yes, I'm committed to that. I'm willing to confront my own ego. I'm willing to confront the egos in my cause, in my organization, in my home, in my institution. I'm willing to confront them with love, but confront them. But not everybody's going to do that at first. Not everybody has the support inside. Not everybody has enough self-love to care more for their souls than for their faces.
Yes.
So we are going to build that support together. And then as more of us join in, then it's easier to bring other people in. It's just like my recycling example. You know, at first it was hard to recycle. Now pretty much anybody can do it. We want consciousness to become trendy. and this is how it happens, by reaching out to each other. You can come and join our organization. You can practice the inner revolution without ever speaking to us again. I don't care. We're all one. However we're doing it.
Or you can just avail yourself of some of the support we can give you without you joining our organization.
Exactly.
Get support.
Exactly. We have, you know, a YouTube channel. We have books. We have music. We have groups. We have, you know, we'll talk to you. We want you to talk to us. We welcome you. And if you have that fire in your belly to co-create the world, fine, let's work together to do it. You know, one thing we know, if we don't try, it ain't going to happen.
That's right.
Right? So we're guaranteed.
I do a lot of work with abuse survivors, violent abuse, and so their egos have been crushed, and my ego as a child was crushed. I totally believe in transcending the ego and working on loving all parts of me. But there was that part of me that didn't feel like I had a right to even meet my own needs and stuff like that. So coming from that perspective, what is the message? Because I know the ego, I know the danger of the ego, and I see it everywhere I look, and my own ego is destructive. But when we talk about the suppression of our life force and the need for an ego to even, you know, work on that. I just wanted to comment on that too.
You know, I love that question. No one has ever asked me that question before, but what comes to me immediately, Scott, don't turn around. I want to see your face. The leadership would be your Shana Punam, your beautiful face. It wasn't their egos that were crushed. It was their souls that were crushed. And they don't need to replace their souls with egos. They need the truth, and they need love. The ego sucks it all up like a sponge. Like, oh, yeah, that means I'm great. Or I was a total victim. I mean, I've done a lot of work with people who have been abused. And I know that, you know, the denial Oh, I had nothing to do with it. It was all him. That doesn't work either. It doesn't heal us. When we can say, yes, I got pleasure from that, or I knew I held it over him, or whatever is the truth. I don't mean make it up. When you can come to the truth about your own part of anything, you are now finally ready to be freed. I believe in owning our accountability, having total compassion for the part of us that may have participated, owning all of ourselves, having compassion for the soul and start feeding the soul. You know, puffing people up, which is what the egos ask for. Oh, you're really, all it does is you end up with a puffed up ego. Find that deeper part of that person. Know you're talking to the soul. Support it and help it to see what it has to give to others. And when that person, that soul, sees its value in terms of what it can give to others, it begins to come alive again. That would be my suggestion. Thank you so much for that wonderful question. By the way, I am available, that's what, and we are available to help you as you're looking in at your own life. That's in the Talk to Me. If you want to know how these examples that John and Scott have brought up, they're so important. Let us support you as you support us. And if you really, if you can come to our Inner Revolutionary Training weekend, I can help you intuitively, with things that may be blocking you from being the inner revolutionary that you are at the core. And it would be my privilege to do so. So with that, Helen.
Thank you so much, Beth.
Thank you. It was totally my pleasure. I'd like to lead a close, if that's okay with everybody. Okay. Let's all connect to that child within that knew the world was screwed up and said, I wish mommy didn't beat me. I wish mommy and daddy loved each other. I wish they didn't treat my brother like that. I wish there was nobody sick. There was nobody alone. I wish there was no garbage in the ocean. And listen very closely and see if you can't hear that little voice in you saying, I'm still here. I'm still here. And now say to it, we can go beyond I wish because we know how. Bless you. Thank you so much.